Whoop whoop and welcome to another live stream here today. And we will have this one in English because we have a valued guest from not the evil island over there. No, from Belgium, the country that supposedly doesn't even exist. We have here today Vulpes. Whoop whoop.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me on.
And of course, again, Peter the second.
The first one has sadly passed away. I have some secret information on the Kingdom of Belgium because the king is of the House of Welfs, so we have a connection there to our other speaker.
Okay. Well, then everything has been revealed. Everything is over. It's over. All right. Okay. Well, what are we going to talk about today? It's going to be NGOs, a very dry and boring topic, and I don't even know why you're even listening to this. No, in all seriousness, it is really interesting once you dive deep into these networks of seemingly innocent organizations that are supposedly there to help democracy and make the world a better place and something like that. So why should we even care? This is one of the biggest questions we want to answer today. And how does the game even work? And what can we do about it? And this is, especially this one, will be a major part in the end. Because we don't just want to say, everything is bad. We want to actually give you some advice on what to do and what not to do. All right, let's introduce our valued guest. It is Vulpes, for those who don't know you. You're a Belgian guy from the Flanders region, and we've met at the Karlstage last year.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. And I've heard you have an Substack, and every time you post something on Twitter, it's always some really interesting stuff about Carl Schmitt for some reason.
Yeah, that's one of my interests. But I've written, I think now 2 articles on Amphora, which is Leo's Substack, about some parts of it. Maybe we can also get into some of that at some points, maybe later, because there are some tidbits in there that are quite useful also for understanding this whole NGO sphere. But we can discuss this a little later after we've cleared up some other things.
And I remember one really interesting conversation we had last year at the Karlstage, where we were talking about the position of France and Germany in the European order. And you come from basically the crossroads between these two hegemonic, well, used to be hegemonic empires. And I talked to you about the French language and that I do understand it, but I learned it so I can ignore it and not just, not understand it. And this brings us to our sponsor today. Well, not really sponsor, but I really like Werner Herzog, and let's listen to him, what he says about the French language.
I do understand French, but I refuse to speak it. It's the last thing I would ever do. You can only get some French out of me with a gun pointed at my head or something like that. Then I would speak French. It actually happened to me. I was taken prisoner in Africa, and drunk soldiers on a truck, all of them 15, 16 years old, some of them 8, 9 years old, and I mean really scared. One pointing a gun here, Kalashnikov, another one here and another one there. So that was very unpleasant because they were all drunk and some of the little ones were stoned. And I tried to explain that they probably arrested the wrong ones, and the captain of them shouts at me, "On ne parle français ici." Here we are speaking French, so I had to say a few things in French. I regret it.
How does this make you feel?
It's not my mother tongue, so yeah, it is fine, I think. It's a fine enough position to hold.
I
That's a very
disagree.
diplomatic answer.
I think
Well, we have to
France
be.
hating is very low class coded, and it's some sort of normie allowed racism. France is a good country. The French are good people. The French language is, let's say, okay-ish language, and we should not hate on them.
Well, okay. They're still better than other. I'm thinking of a certain Eastern European country, but I still think they're pretty gay.
I have an
all right.
idea.
But let's come back to our main topic. Before we start into it, though, I want to do a short shilling because the Karlstage are back on sale again. Well, the tickets for the next Karlstage in 2026. Me and Vulpes, as I said, we met at the Karlstage, and it's exactly these kind of talks and connections you make that are really invaluable, and why I always love to shill about the Karlstage and other Skillings events. So let's listen to a short explanation from our dear friend Schattenmacher about them.
I am tired of the same old faces, the same old things.
Tja, wem geht es hierzulande nicht so? Deshalb Karlstage, Leute, für neue Gesichter und neue Verbindungen. Nachdem im vergangenen Jahr die Karlstage ein ordentlicher Erfolg waren, haben die Skillingskonferenzen sich dazu entschieden, auch in diesem Jahr wieder eine Konferenz auf deutschem Boden abzuhalten. Da tragen interessante Redner wie der Jolly Heretic, Edward Dutton oder meine Wenigkeit etwas vor, und danach können Fragen gestellt und sich mit den Vortragenden persönlich unterhalten werden. Die Vorträge selbst werden von einer englischen Organisation auf den Weg gebracht und da auch in dieser Sprache abgehalten. Einigermaßen ordentliche Beherrschung des Englischen ist also unbedingt angeraten. Eingeladen ist im Prinzip jeder. Es gibt lediglich eine Richtlinie, dass alle Gäste in gehobener Garderobe, also mindestens Hemd und Anzughose, erscheinen sollen. Erfahrungsgemäß treffen sich bei diesen Konferenzen viele ordentliche Jungmann mit akademischem Hintergrund oder intellektuellen Interessen. Wer sich in diesem Profil wiederfindet oder gerne Kontakte dahingehend aufbauen möchte, der ist herzlich eingeladen. Tickets müssen allerdings vorher erworben werden. So, whoever is also tired of the same old things should come to the Karlstage and seize the chance to listen to the Schattenmacher and many more. Karlstage vom 24. bis zum 26.04. Diesmal mit dem Thema Reshaping Europe. Alle Links in der Videobeschreibung.
All right. Now, with all this shilling out of the way and the merchant spirit appeased, we can finally follow our artistic pleasures and go into the topic at hand.
Yes.
All right. So, just briefly, why should we even care about NGOs? Aren't they just like some non-governmental organization? You know.
First, I would like to point out that NGOs, it's only a part of the whole system, of the whole grouping of organizations who have a quite outsized influence on the whole of the Western world and the whole world in general. So this is one reason why we have to be mindful of them, because they do influence how our nations behave, with what laws are passed, what regulations are passed, even things like what is in your school curricula, all the fingerprints of NGOs, but all kinds of other organizations are also on them. So this is why I like to speak more of what in English is called civil society, than just purely the NGOs, because it's a much broader much broader grouping of organizations. It includes much more. It includes not only your classic NGOs, but also certain the media, universities, and some other organizations who are very difficult to call them purely NGOs, because they're much more dominated by the government, but are still quite independent in some ways. So you are able to grasp a much larger amount with talking about civil society, and not necessarily reducing it to only talking about NGOs. And another reason why it's very important, they not only have their fingerprints on all kinds of laws or regulations or policies that get passed, but they are also a very important line of defense for so-called democracy. And you hear this often quite clearly when they speak about a threat to democracy. For example, in Belgium, our current government is in center right, however you want to say it. It's, of course, it's not a based government or whatever, but they want to do their classic thing of cutting some funding, making sure our government budgets gets I forgot how we say it in English, but it's like that we have less expenses and all these kinds of things. So they're cutting now in the funding to some degree for these kinds of civil society organizations. And there's now going on a 3-day strike in Belgium. And one of the reasons why they are striking, why a lot of NGOs are also involved in the strike, why lots of civil society organizations are involved in the strike, is because they want to cut, I think, 25% of our foreign aid. And so this is something they do not like. And when this happens, what do they say? They say it's a threat against democracy, because democracy is very much entangled with the whole concept of civil society, with all the NGOs. So
I mean,
that's why it's important.
Yeah, our current ruling class loves to lie, but in one, sometimes they say it's a threat to our democracy, and when they say our democracy, they really mean it. It's theirs. It's their network. It's basically their friends and not ours.
And one of the why it's important to link, also for us to link democracy and civil society together, because lots of boomers and populists, their understanding of democracy is the more classical, traditional one of that. Democracy is what the people demand. Of course, you then have a bourgeois Rechtsstaat democracy, that democracy liberalism that came about during the 19th century. That whole thing has some deviations from pure democracy, but when a populist speaks, it's the will of the people, democracy, the people have spoken. But for a leftist, they might sometimes use that language rhetorically, You saw it when in the United States in 2016 they were complaining about the popular vote. But in general, when they speak about democracy, they don't really care about voting, about the people's will in that most populist kind of way that boils from the soil, and then the people speak in one voice. This is not what they mean with democracy. And I think I gave you a little clip, and I think this will also clarify it some more.
Yeah.
So we can show this now.
With the U.S. pulling support for development aid, concerns grow over the soft power vacuum in support for civil society. Andrew, how does civil society bolster democracy?
Civil society plays a vital role in promoting democracy by getting in with communities and truly knowing the people and knowing what it is they need and want. There's no better avenue to speak for them, advocate for the people on the ground than civil society groups who are literally in with the people. They're ensuring that the messages, the needs, and the wants of populations are carried up to governments, and that governments are responsive to the needs of the people.
How can the U.S. support global development efforts?
Traditionally, the United States has supported global development efforts in civil society through USAID, through state DRL, and through the National Endowment for Democracy, or NED. In the current situation, that seems somewhat in flux, but it'll be very important that this kind of work is continued, that these kinds of relationships are long-term, and civil society gets the support it needs. Otherwise, we're looking at a situation where civil society, in the midst of funding uncertainty, in the midst of closing civic space, just might cease to exist in the way that we understand it. Civil society goes a very long way as a tool and partner of U.S. foreign policy efforts to ensure that the United States are, in fact, more prosperous, stronger, and more secure.
So
It's I just love the double speak. It's kind of enraging because
it very much is. And when I came across that clip, like quite by random, because I was looking at some things and I saw this, it was like, this is perfect for what I, as a small introduction to show it to somebody and see like, this is what they mean, because there were a few very interesting things that was said. First of all, it carries up the needs of the people to the government. And in Dutch, we have two names for civil society. One is burgermaatschappij, which is a direct translation, but the other one is what we call het middenveld. Translated, this would be the middle field, would be a literal translation. A more free translation would be that what stands in between, and then what is implied in between the individual and the state, or even the markets and the state, or the individual and the market. Civil society is in its essence negotiation. It's in its essence in the layer that connects people to the government, but also in the opposite way. It also connects the government to the people. So in some of the organizations I will cover later, one of the things they do, these civil societies organizations, they lobby in the interests of the states. It could be for the gays, it could be for migrants, it could be for a whole host, could be even, for example, unions are also a civil society organization. They are not, of course, not an NGO, but they're a civil society organization. Same for employers, federations. All these kinds of organizations are part of the civil society, and so they try to lobby, bring back the interests of the quote-unquote people to the government, but they also do the opposites. They bring down the demands of the government to the people, and they have that dual function. So, for example, it are often NGOs that are, at least in Belgium, that are partly involved in enforcing laws and regulations. There are I've now forgotten the name of it, but there is an organization, and what it does, it has the authority from the state to, when somebody wants to renovate a public space, they have to make sure that handicapped people, cripples, can use it. And you can only get certain subsidies or even be allowed to do these renovations or build a new building if certain requirements are met. And there is an NGO with an official government mandate. They're functioning completely independent. The government cannot say who is the director of that NGO, what they exactly do, but they got the mandate from the government to control businesses, and an architect can send their plans to that NGO. That NGO will read it and look at it and see like, yes, this is approved, or no, this is not approved, you have to do some edits. Or they can even go on site and look on site and see, is this building compliant, yes or no? And based on their advice, that business or that organization who wants to do these renovations of their own property can get subsidies or even gets penalized by fines if they do not comply. So that is to say that the direction is in two ways.
I mean, the thing about this is Blair would or others invented basically this idea of public-private partnership, and that it's all the rage. And
but he did not. It existed for a very long time.
Yeah. I know. We have something like this in Germany as well with the TÜV and other. The thing is, they are not generally political. Well, some of them function quite well and they do their job. So what is the difference there? Because you have some NGOs that are doing a normal job and quite well actually, and then you have a huge mass of some of them, and some even worse, that basically do their job kinda, but are mostly there to push like a certain agenda. So in a covert way, with the example you gave, I can imagine 10 different ways of how to basically influence a push buildings into a certain direction. If you basically own this NGO. So what is the difference there? Why do some of them functions and some most of them are just political tools?
I think it's by its very nature, it very much tends towards some kind of politicization. It's very difficult to keep these organizations neutral because they already have a certain interests. So it's one of the difficulties of the complex modern managerial world. You need these kinds of organizations, otherwise our countries are too complex in many ways, and they form, when they function well, indeed a very good barrier to make it certain that certain interests come to the state and that the state knows what it has to do. But it's also very much open to capture, and if you have a certain ideology in power, it's very easy to help create or allow the creation of civil society organizations that assist you in spreading that power or maintaining that power and that ideology that goes with it. For example, the city, I did a small thread on this, I think a few months ago, but the city of Ghent is a very good example of a city that has been taken over by NGOs funded and assisted by the Greens. Because when the Greens got into power in, what was it, 2006? Or 2008, I forgot the exact date when they got into power in Ghent. They went working on creating a very, very strong civil society network within the city. And basically, without the heavy hand of the state, it would be almost impossible to remove it. And so they totally entrench themselves with that. So they can do their job and they are very important, but they're also the whole idea is also very vulnerable to a power structure just using it for itself and creating infinite NGOs to push its own agenda and its own interests.
I think this is an interesting topic because the bad kind of NGOs that we have in mind, they are basically all of them top down one way or another. They are paid by the government or by the EU or by some foreign government, foreign state, and those are the bad ones. And of course, managerialism even makes it worse. But this was an interesting point also that the guy in the comments mentioned, that in principle, if you have this very broad definition of civil society that you have, I think this is, well, this could be a good thing, because in my ideal society, government would be quite small and many things would be done by some sort of independent organizations. Independent, I know I use this word, but of course this word is poisoned in when officials use it. But because there is this kind of debate, let's say, between libertarians and socialists, and the socialists want everything to be controlled by the state, and the libertarians want everything to be controlled by let's say profit-oriented companies. And but the ideal thing for most institutions would be not the state, but also not a private company, and we have many of those things, and this would be good. But of course, managerialism, and there's this Robert Conquest second law of politics, that every institution that is not explicitly right-wing will turn left-wing. I think this is this results from managerialism. Managerialism leads to this overgrowing bureaucracy, and it takes away the good elements of this. I think everything should be privatized in the original sense of the word. This is also something that often I see on Twitter when people say, oh, this and that is a private company, or this is, in America they have privatized healthcare. But of course, how you call it, a corporation, an Aktiengesellschaft, is not a private institution. It's a public institution, but not a government institution. And I hate this weird state of public but not government, this democratized or managerialized organization where there is no clear responsibility. Okay, now this was a bit of a obscure rant by me, but I hope people understand.
Yeah, and the thing, we can maybe get in this later because it's a little bit off subject, but Belgium, I think I've told it to you or to some other people. In Belgium, we had the pillarization that to some degree also existed in Austria, and also very much so in the Netherlands, which was then basically civil society, but then along the sides of ideological lines. But that would lead us a little bit too far afield for now. But you also made some interesting and important comments. The whole idea about foreign aid, for what does USD aid do? What does the Endowment for Democracy do? Why does the United States spend so much money on it? The point of this is not to infinitely send money to a certain country. The point of it is to establish it's not an organic in the sense that it is developed in the country itself, but a self-sustaining NGO civil society network within a nation that is aligned to the progressive goals. That's what all that money gets spent on. This is why why you could see after USD aid was pulled that in certain Balkan countries, I think like Macedonia, quite a few of those NGO orgs collapsed. But why, for example, Western Europe and large parts of Eastern Europe were still functioning and are still functioning without USD aid. Why? Because they've created their own self-sustaining NGO civil society network. So that's why the United States pushes for the creation of these kinds of things. And related to that, and also always very important, all these NGOs, all the civil societies are connected to one another. They are not, for many of the smaller tier organizations, they exist purely in their own country, but you can scale them up to umbrella organizations who exist for the whole of Europe or even the whole Western world or the whole world. And in there, they all talk to one another. So it's a very much an international business. It's not just local. And this is also very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and you asked a very important question. So why does even something like the Endowment for Democracy exist? And it was founded basically as a way to covertly fund things the American government or security state wanted to happen in foreign countries, but they didn't want to be directly seen funding. So it's basically another layer of plausible deniability, and it started like that. So it started with basically the combination of having tax deductible Spenden. What's that?
Donations.
Donations from private corporations to some NGOs like that, and the state wanting to have another layer of plausible deniability between them and some of the actions. So you had a basically overlap of interests there. Private corporations getting something out of these deals, maybe mining rights, or maybe like having the rights to build the IT infrastructure there in the country or whatever. And the US security state gets a network of basically spies in some sense, because if you're the American government and you want to have something happen in, I don't know, Brazil or something, like you could either develop or maintain your own basically official network of contacts there into the civil society, so-called, or you just have a friendly NGO that kind of works with you, but it's not really officially you. So it is a very important tool in the modern game.
And this is why, and whatever you want to say about Orban, and there are many criticisms that rightly can be given to him, but the reason why he's hated so much by the EU establishment is because he was basically an NGO, Soros NGO, civil society pawn that revolted and that then created his own civil society network within Hungary that is only loyal to him and his party and is not loyal to the wider civil society network in the Western world. So that's also always something to keep in mind, because the moment you do not align with that Western network, you are by definition called illiberal and anti-democratic, authoritarian most often. So this is very much a part of the whole definition about, like I said earlier, about democracy. That's the essence of democracy. I've called it somewhere else. Human rights are the essence of democracy. And this gets very close, because all these organizations, they care first and foremost about human rights. And when you read their documents, like their yearly reports or other things they send out, you very often find that they state very clearly, we want to help build up democracy. We want to fight against the anti-democratic forces. That's a very strong notion within their self-understanding of these organizations, that they are democracy, that they are justice, that they are the rights, that they are always in the right, because they are that kind of organization that does these kinds of things. And what do they push? Human rights. So that's
in
all
Germany,
together.
In Germany, we have a brilliant term for that. They call it always the wehrhafte Demokratie, which is basically like the defensible democracy or self-defending democracy. So it's always, I mean, these are beautiful terms they invent, and it's so many fantasy terms they've already invented that even regime creatures themselves have trouble adjusting to all the newspeak that gets dropped in a weekly manner. But alas, it is basically completely right. It's their thing, and they are, from their point of view, the good guys. And I actually believe that some of them are not just driven by power and the lust for influence, but some of them generally believe that they are, doing the good thing, trademark. But
or it can go together also. Like they can want influence and power, but also believe that ideological component is part of why they are doing it and why they find it important to do. So it's very much interwoven with one another, and it's often very difficult to fully untangle it from from one another because it feeds into each other. It's not like power is all. I like to say power is always colored. You don't have it in its pure form. There's always something attached or even interwoven within it. And one of the annoying things about, or for us, frustrating things about the modern progressive world is that that ideological components, they very strongly believe also in it, together with the lust for establishing, for maintaining their own power and creating even more power. So it's all, at least in my understanding of it, it all flows together.
I mean, in that sense, I think it's rather unique because, for example, this guy asked or said, "I wish foreign aid was just bribes for the access to natural resources and power." And in that sense, like this is really, if you would just say, "Yeah, we do this to." Well, as America or as Russia or as Germany, if we were a serious country and not just, well, we would have these organizations, and their clear goal is basically further the interests of well, the country or certain groups of the country or whatever. But no, they stand there and have the audacity to say that, yeah, we're about spreading democracy and make freedom and whatever, while everybody who just looks at them for like more than 5 seconds realizes that's complete bullshit. And even like if you go back in history, I think there was never a time where you had just so blatant well, lies in that sense, because back then even the Romans came in and said, yeah, well, it's about Roman power. You know, we will rule you. We might do some nice infrastructure works, but in the end, it's there to serve Roman power. So,
but
yes,
the one
and this
thing,
is a very important thing about this foreign aid, because there are many resentful right-wingers who oppose foreign aid because they say, oh, we don't want to send our money to other countries because we want to have it for ourselves. And then there are the a bit more cynical ones who say, we don't want to feed Africans because then there are more Africans. But you have to understand, the point of foreign aid is to further the goals of the empire. And nowadays, the empire is ruled by bad people and does not align with our interests, at least to some degree, but to other degrees it does, because having, let's say, reproductive health stuff in Africa and India, or there are those rumors that Bill Gates is somehow funding vaccinations that sterilize people in the third world or stuff like this. You might say this is our imperial interest, and especially in Eastern Europe, because this is also something I think about. My policies regarding Eastern Europe are completely different than Western Europe. I want pro-establishment, pro-EU, let's say, center-right politicians to rule in Eastern Europe, because I want to keep Eastern Europe to our empire and not to the Russian Empire. So it might be very beneficial to fund civil society in Eastern Europe, and all the things about gay people and having a pride parade in some Eastern European city or whatever. This is not the important thing. The important thing is to keep Eastern Europe in our empire, well, which is not our empire now, but it might very well be in the future. I don't want Russia-aligned Eastern Europe, and center-right pro-establishment EU types are preferable to pro-Russian types. And foreign aid, it might always be just to further imperial interests. And there's also this story in Germany. There's a very, very famous story in the right-wing populist news sphere, that it came out that the German foreign help budget somehow financed bicycle lanes in Peru, and all the resentful right-wingers say we don't want to finance bicycle lanes in Peru. But I think we should finance bicycle lanes in Peru, and later maybe we could export bicycles to Peru, you know, or have some influence on Peruvian infrastructure and slowly take over the country. I mean, we will not take over the country with bicycle lanes, but this is a good first step, and it can be useful to do foreign aid. And I think one of the reasons why we lost the 2 world wars is because we did not do this to a large enough degree. We did not have enough control over smaller countries. For example, the Welfish Kingdom of Belgium was completely aligned with the West. This this could have been avoided maybe somehow. But so always keep in mind, if you are a country and if you are an empire, you have to do foreign aid and you have to do foreign influence, and it's a good thing that we are doing it. But of course, it is right now not really coming
Yeah,
to
it's
good ends.
it's just like everything else, kind of fake and kind of gay. And I don't know, maybe it's just my preference, but I would prefer to have like just an honest thing saying, yeah, that's our interest to do this, and we do it because of this and this and this. And then you could say, all right, that's understandable. Have a nice day. But no, it always has to be some moralizing bullshit. And yeah,
it's also the that they add. Yeah, maybe we'd also do it to take all these resources, but in the end, it's also better for you. It's good for you that we also spread women's rights in your country. We take your resources, yes, but you also get some women's rights. Like it's that duality. It's that not being honest about plundering or about trying to control. But maybe we can now skip to or go to a next topic in this, because I have prepared some organizations also that I just want to look at to help show it. I think I sent you a link in the chat. It's to a website of an organization. It's just to have some visual material to see what I'm talking about.
okay.
It's pulled up. Yes. Okay. So it's Casa Rosa. It's an interesting organization. It's called the Regenbooghuis, so the Rainbow House, and it's, as you can see in the on the website itself, it's an umbrella organization for smaller LGBTIQ women's aligned or feminist aligned organizations within mostly Ghent, but also the broader province of East Flanders. And you can see on the logo, it's funded by the city of Ghent, by the province of East Flanders, and by Savaria, which is the umbrella organization of all the LGBTIQ feminist organizations within Flanders. But we will go to the next after we've talked about this. So what does this organization do? First of all, they have property within the city of Ghent that they make available, or most of the time free, sometimes for a small fee, for all kinds of LGBTIQ organizations within the city that they can use to, could be simple things as a gaming night to have some drinks, or could be a lecture, could be workshops, could be all these kinds of things. So this is one thing that is NGOs or do very concretely. They give space to organize. They give space to give events. Next to that, what does Casa Rosa also do? They lobby. They are very close to the city of Ghent. And so whenever there are complaints about some gay that gets assaulted or something, they can go to that organization, or if that organization is polling their local LGBTIQ organizations, and they, from those polls, they get like, or people, they are feeling afraid for whatever reason, then that organization, who is trusted and is connected to the city, goes to the city, complains about that. The police gets involved. The police then start organizing some campaigns against hatreds against women or hatred against gays, these kind of things. So that's one thing that's two things. That's lobbying, and it's space to organize. And with space to organize, they also have people available if you have questions about these kinds of things. I want to, my friend is gay or whatever, I want to learn more. These kinds of stupid things, but they have all the information, or a lot of that information, available. So they become very powerful, strong points. Also, if there is a pride parade in the city, that's organizations Casa Rosa will most likely help with the organization, but it's also a way to pull people to go on that parade. But more insidious, you could say, when there is some, like Ghent is university city, sometimes the right-wing student organizations want to have somebody speak, like Martin Sellner was in Ghent last year, and because he was there, the left-wing organizations, the whole left-wing civil society network in Ghent said, we don't want hate in our city, so we're going to protest and get a protest march. And an NGO like Casa Rosa, who is not politically involved in that sense, they will make certain that their members know about this. They will, and often people who are working there, because it's there are volunteers, but there are also people effectively working there. So it's also a place where leftists can go to work, but they will make sure help mobilize people. So I call that kind of organization in my tiering system a tier 2 organization, or NGO civil society organization, in the sense that it is an umbrella organization that collects many smaller tier 1 organizations, and those tier 1 organizations are usually innocent in the sense they could be a women's choir. That's one of the organizations that is attached to Casa Rosa. So these are not politically charged at all, but because of that connection, we also had our climate marches in, what was it again, 2018, something like that. And one of the ways they got lots of people is through organizations like this. They're going to have a march, and we are going to ask you to come if you want. So it's a very easy way to help funnel people in this kind of organizations. Like here you see some of the projects they are doing to help. And something else that Casa Rosa does, if Ghent wants to do some new LGBTIQ projects or whatever, they of course are experts for that, but they are all in all only a city-based one in Ghent. They are not that truly important they are an important part of the city, but they are not one of the really large ones. But the next one I'm going to send this now is...
Can we make a short break to engage in the scientific discipline of physiognomy analysis?
Yeah,
Wilhelm?
I was going to.
We can.
Yeah, that's why I opened this one. I mean, Peter has a thesis that in...
Yeah,
well,
I might have told you this, Vulpes, when I visited you. This is a anthropological, sociological theory about mouses and ticks. Ticks, those little parasites, spider bloodsuckers. And there's this theory that there are high-quality, biologically conservative women who become leftists for social reasons, and those are the sweet mouses. I think I told you about green sweet mouses. And for example, here, the first woman to the left of this box in the middle, this looks very like a mouse, a good high-quality girl. Of course, they take the high-quality girls for the picture, but we can also in the background
see a lot of
overweight woman.
Yeah, and look at the two guys. Yeah, the one is a little bit too excited, I think, and he's he's only there to. Yeah, we know what he's there.
Is he there to catch a sweet mouse, or is it there
Maybe.
because he's really gay and he's really interested and wants to learn about sexual diversity, and he missed the point of the whole organization? Maybe.
Well, we will never know, I guess.
Yes, we will never know. So I sent the second link. So that's the more important one. It's called Savaria, and that's the LGBTIQ umbrella organization for the whole of Flanders. But it's much more than just an umbrella organization that unites the many different many different smaller organizations. It's really one that lobbies. Again, it's also officially recognized by the Flemish government as the official organ for the LGBTIQ community, quote unquote, in Flanders.
Is that?
creatures. You will see horrors beyond human comprehension. But
Will our screen get nuked if I scroll down further?
No, normally
All
not.
right. Okay.
So look here. Savaria toont zich solidair met de Budapest Pride. So Savaria shows its support to the Budapest Pride Parade because Orban is evil man. But this is the organization that is really a lot more of the hard lobbying work. Yeah, Belgium is the second place because of their whole civil society network is so powerful. So it's not a surprise that we are.
So according to this map, Belgium is like the second gayest country in Europe, or behind Denmark. What?
Yeah, but we have also very strong anti-discrimination laws to insane degrees, but we can cover this maybe a little later. But this organization gets about I have the exact numbers somewhere. I made in my document. They get if I recall correctly, they get something like 2.5 million euros a year as an NGO. So which is not an insubstantial, like for Flanders, which is 6.5 million people, it's not an insubstantial amount of money to use for what they want to do.
But in a grand scheme, that's not much.
Yeah, but it would be if like one of the smaller Länder had its own.
Yeah.
It's in Belgium that's quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
You can reach and do quite a lot of things with those 2.5 million, and it's only one of all the organizations that exist. So what it does that lobbying work. It speaks in name of the gays. It also has a lot of international connections. It also helps to, and this is the other one that I'm going to, which has it's an organization that is part of Savaria, and it's called CLIC. And CLIC, in contrast to, is the study organization of Savaria. And what is its goal? What does it do? It develops, it teaches, its businesses, police departments, they can go to CLIC to go like advice and informing. So that's workshops, these kinds of things, to learn about how to implement LGBTIQ friendly policies within your business, within your organization, within your police departments, all this kind. That's one thing that they do. Another thing is, which is Savaria is being used for when our government writes new educational programs, they get a say in there to help within a diversity perspective, LGBTIQ friendly educational policy. They also create certain educational material that then can get used by schools, by other organizations. So that's one of the things they do. So it's again the double network. They help to form the people into a certain ideological direction, and they also speak in their name and lobby in their name and try to push for more legislation or an official lobby organization like Savaria. When there is law relevant to that they want to publish, they can give advice on those laws, if it's LGBTIQ friendly enough or not. They're very much involved in that whole thing. So this is, and the reason why I'm showing these organizations, because you can very clearly see with them how they work and how they have their influence in anything. Like here, you're seeing all the linked organizations. There are a few here that I also want to talk about it. Like maybe with your German, you can understand to quite a degree.
It's funny if you just read it like like if you're drunk or something, you can understand it really well.
Yeah, but so all these organizations that you're going to, and this is again very important, they're all connected. So if one complains about something, the others will jump to assist immediately. And also very important, and this is something that many people have difficulty to understanding, these organizations are supported by your central government and your local governments. They are not some, and this is like lots of Americans have difficulty with understanding this, but these organizations are mostly subsidized by the state. Like it's not secret Soros cabals, even though it exists, and Soros does spend a lot of money on civil society and these kind of organizations, yes. But especially in Europe and even also in the United States, most of the money comes from the government. It's not donations, it's government subsidies. And that's I think one of the more important things to keep very much in mind. It's the government who funds this. And again, also 2.5 million a year is not that much, but if it's 10 years, then you already have 25 million spent over those 10 years on that one thing. Like even if you say, and now we stop funding that organization, about 25 million euros of work or influence has already been spent. So it creates structures that get solidified, even though you no longer fund it. These effects they will have given will still be there. So that's also something which you always have to keep in mind. Like the center-right response of we're just going to stop funding is not enough.
Yeah. Can you make the picture of this Zita woman a bit bigger? I want to see her. And while we talk about this, a good thing is that leftists don't know how to use money because they are very inefficient. Just imagine if we had a budget of 25 million over 10 years, what we could accomplish. Maybe they have some houses or whatever, or some place where they can meet, and even if you cut funding, they still have the house. But probably they are just renting the house. They're not investing in assets. So this is a white pill. They are extremely inefficient with their money.
I mean, when you look at with how little money many Burschenschaften survive, and not just survive, actually do quite a lot of stuff. It's like looking into a different world, or like in some sense they're doing things that more Burschenschaften or student unions should be doing. I mean, you have in Ghent the KWHW, which does pretty good work, and we have in Germany some cities where things get going, but most of them in Germany are pretty lost. They're not really active in any way, or are really not doing anything substantial.
I was going to say, yes, they are quite inefficient, but what makes them really powerful in the sense that they are official advising organs. So they have that certain official association with the state or with other organizations, even in society in general. They are the experts, and because they are the experts, they can set the tone. They can decide, like, okay, these are the subjects, or this is how we are going to explain these things. And then the reports they write or the advices they give, they go through, they flow into other organizations or into law to some degree, or into policy. Of course, there are many other influences and forces that try to influence all these kinds of things, but because they are the official experts, like Servaria is the expert organization on LGBTIQ in Flanders. So when the state goes, it's like, when they for example, they don't do it that much, but there are other organizations that make statistics on LGBTIQ violence and these kinds of things. And you have these statistics that those organizations make. They go with this to the state and say, like, yes, here, we have a rise in violence against LGBTIQ people. Therefore, the government needs to do things. And quite often the government will say, and of course they're allied with the media, because the media is also part of that whole civil society world. That study gets thrown around, their report gets thrown around, and then the government says, oh yes, this is a problem. We are now going to change legislation or policy, or we're going to now give more money to these organizations, or we're going to do some other things. So it's a very, it's not that they're inefficient, that can be a white pill to some degree, but they don't, the money they, if they would be like even 10 times less inefficient, they still have that influential position. So it's,
Yeah. And those fake studies, they are often cited everywhere. And of course, I see this often in mainstream media. Just the headline is a study says this and that, whatever, some leftist thing that's not true. And of course, nobody reads the actual study, and most people don't even look who did the study. So they think some scientists found this out, but in reality, it's government-paid activists. Just a few months ago, there was a study in Germany that all the leftists on Twitter cited, and the study claimed that foreigners do not increase the local crime rates. And then I read the study and I wrote a detailed article debunking it. But the main argument was, because foreigners are moving into areas that already have much crime, they do not increase local crime. But of course, they do increase national crime, and we don't want shithole areas growing. But those kind of fake studies, basically everything leftists say is based on those fake studies. So, of course, the NGOs are bad, and this has to end. But on the other side, we need our own NGOs, and we need to do our own studies who don't even have to be fake, because we have, I would think we have truth on our side, so we can do real studies.
I send you another link in the chat, and
Wait,
it's
I first want to check out this one.
yeah,
This
Myriad
was
is a very
they were linked as a partner there. King Ben Baldwin Foundation.
Yes.
So is that the Welfish king, or who is he?
Baldwin, that's the what is it now? Not, it's 3 kings ago. Was the king after the Second World War. After his father abdicated, he became the king. Is by and large one of the most liked kings, especially of recent history. Like after him, nobody respects the royal house anymore. But yeah,
so
and of course,
do people respect the guy who had some fun in Belgium, in Congo?
People don't talk as much about him as in other nations, but his leftists hate him, of course. I think my Twitter profile says I'm his most loyal soldier or something like that, because but he was the only king of Belgium who desired Belgian greatness. He had detailed plans about how to invade the Netherlands and take over the Catholic provinces of the Netherlands to add them to Belgium. So I quite like him, but yeah, but that's also another one that's on the King Baldwin Foundation. It's on the list to at some point investigate more fully. But I sent you another link in the chats. It's the most recent one, and I just want to use that to show something else that these organizations do, and which is very powerful, useful for them. One of the things that's it's basically translated how as a school can you help work on creating a more gender and LGBTIQ inclusive school policy. And what they have is that they have a lot of documentation. If I would be CEO of a business and I would want to make it a gender inclusive business, then I can very easily look at the documentation, like find documentation, ask for documentation, pay some people, and I can fully implement it. And that's a very strong advantage that they have. You have nicely constructed action plans or a flowchart of how to make something more LGBTIQ friendly or something, or help promote certain interests. And that's a very strong advantage that they have, and it makes it also very easy to create new kinds of these organizations, or get started on having a diversity officer in your school or in your thing,
So
because all of that documentation already exists, and all
yeah,
of these, how it should work, what things you have to pay attention to, that's already all written out.
yeah. So it's basically how to become a political officer in your local school.
This is not exactly that. It's more how your school can get more in diversity inclusive policy. So how you should change your school to become more friendly to LGBTIQ. That's basically
But
what it is.
yeah, but basically it's just injecting central power into or basically the current
Yes,
ruling ideology
or
into local.
or making it very easy for concerned citizens
Yeah.
to do that, because a lot of that is just, it's there for free or against payments, and you're not really forced to do it. But the barrier of, like, of course there are social reasons why people are pushed to do this, but they make the barrier of entry very low because all these things are available. So that's one of the other things that of strengths of these kinds of NGOs. But it could be for environmental policy, it could be for migrants. Like, there are NGOs in existence who help you with employing migrants, and they will help you with which laws, regulations you have to comply with, which documents have to be sent where, all these kinds of things they will help you with, so that you can employ a migrant. And that makes they lower that barrier of entry. They make pushing their agenda much easier.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because well, the bureaucratic state makes life miserable for everybody if you don't, well, if you're not swimming in the system. So it's basically a create resistance everywhere except if you have the key, then you
Yes.
can flow through. And this is a very interesting way of managing or ruling. It has created a rather stable thing. The question is, will this whole system survive an actual crisis, like what we are currently, well, seeing develop in Europe? And this is something I, well, said a lot of times already. We see certain factions of the current ruling class trying to get things into a more production focused well, direction again, and cut some slack in that sense. However, all of these networks, they profit so much from, well, basically they need all of this to survive. If you cut regulations, their whole reason to exist just stops.
Yeah, that's part of it. And the thing, again, it's a dual thing. They need all that money and all that system existing for surviving, but they also believe, partly because of that, that it's the right thing to exist. So it drives up the ideological frame of mind. It makes them even more belligerent when it comes to maintaining their status, or maintaining the money flow, or the work they can do.
Just a quick question.
Yeah,
Am I
this is for
reading
police.
this one? Yeah.
Yeah,
Am
this
I
is for the
reading this
police.
one right? Yeah. Basically, how to discipline police in
It's
that sense.
it's made to trying to make the police score more
Yeah.
LGBTIQ friendly. The thing is, and we can go to that organization next because that's also a very important one. But already since the late 90s in Belgium, there has been, and I think also wider in Europe, but I only know for certain in Belgium, they were starting to push to train the police into becoming less racist, becoming more making them more into the diversity mindset. It was not that successful at that point, but now they're slowly building it up. For example, this also makes Ghent such a lost cause in that the local police department of the city of Ghent has been completely integrated within that whole network. They completely subscribe on everything. Like they have their own. Like when you walk around in Ghent and look at the police, they have more women than more browns than most other police corps. They also, there was a document about that several organizations in the cities signed, which was about the pledge against discrimination, something like that, and the local police force signed this. So one of the very important things that these organizations also do is try to capture or to make sure that the ideology is in the police. For example, our military also has, the Belgian military also has some diversity angle that they're trying to push into everything. And yeah, and that's one of the more dangers for us.
Yeah. I mean, in some sense, it's classical, basically capturing the institutions or disciplining the institutions and bringing them in line with the current thing. It is however, a very unique way of doing it, because like I can imagine someone like a traditional communist, like, I don't know, Stalin or someone, he would just go in and say, well, that's a new line, and if you don't follow the line, well, you're out, or something like that. This is a very Fox way of doing it, basically having not really supposed to have power. Well, in some sense, it's really funny because you have the police, basically some institution in the state that should have or does have tremendous power, and it's being disciplined by some, I don't know, matcha drinking lawyers, basically. Some weasel who just goes there and makes the life miserable until they support the current thing and toe the line.
And like you might remember, last month there was the new EU action plan about LGBTIQ was released, and somebody found a section where they were explicitly talking about pushing it more to bring the police under control of that ideology. That it would be in the official, what the EU wants to do is to have nations make certain that their police forces always get a diversity angle. That's one of the in general one of the things that we can talk about this a little bit more when we get to some of what the EU does, like the EU Commission itself does. But one of the things that they do is to want a diversity perspective into all the policies and all the laws they make, to always make certain that diversity is being thought about when they want a new law or a new policy. So that's also how that seeps into everything. Is the same, that they push, for example, for businesses, to you have a diversity officer, okay? And then the diversity officer, one of the tasks that would be given to that person is to make certain that the strategy of the business has a certain gender perspective or a diversity perspective. And that's also one of the ways how they create power or maintain power or push things in the way they want. It's not to have that ideological office, like ideological, I don't know, officer is maybe the name you can put on it, in every institution or in quite a lot of institutions, who will just, you want to donate money to something, okay, donate money, but with a diversity perspective. And then that guides that money in that direction. Or you want to build a new housing block here, okay, yes, but include a diversity perspective. Make sure that a percentage of those apartments get sold to browns. Make certain that single mothers gets easier access to buy or rent first. Like these kinds of small things are parts of that idea of thinking about diversity first.
It's in some sense it's functionally the same as something like in China. However, it's softer, but I think a bit more insidious because it's yeah.
I was going to say it's just often much harder to, at least from a liberal perspective, much harder to fight against, because
Yeah.
it's suggested, it's guided, but it's rarely really forced. Or if they force it, they have prepared the way that the enforcement becomes natural. That like, yes, but we
Yeah.
spent a decade, 2 decades preparing the soil for it, and now we say it has to be done this way, but most people were already doing it, or were like, yes, this is not a big leap to do, because of
Yeah.
course you're right. And then to just punish the stragglers.
Yeah. It's I don't see a way how this could even like be mitigated. In some sense, you just have to think about how much energy is wasted, and not just like energy in a pure physical sense, but also like good people that could otherwise do real jobs or do like functioning
Uh,
producing jobs
to them, it's a real
that are
job.
just that are just doing like patronage
It's
maintained.
not necessarily patronage of only that. They do a real job to themselves because they make certain that they maintain power.
Yeah. It's about maintaining power, but it's basically patronage in the old Roman way, where you had like client groups that had to be maintained, and this is basically a very very sophisticated version of that, and way more insidious.
Yes, and with a convinced ideological line to it that makes it even more annoying to put. But it's not just I want the interests for that. No, I want my interest, and you are going to subscribe to this ideology and change the way you live to accommodate for that ideology. That's what, at least for me, makes it so much more frustrating to deal with, because like you said, if they were honest in saying we want this for power, we want this because this is good for us, then it's much easier to see and to talk against and to maintain some kind of dignity. But it's not only saying we want power, it's saying we want power and you're going to be gay.
Yeah.
And that makes it more, I don't, to maybe put a moralizing word on it, evil, quote unquote.
Yeah, it is. It is though. I mean, no sensible. I talked with Peter about this in the last video we did in German, where we went into the very very ancient idea of strategy, which is basically, well, you're always going to have a ruling elite, and the point of the ruling elite is to make basically the land they rule prosperous, so that they can basically get a bigger military, or expand outward with that. And I think all this does is basically just a very complex way of taxing people, or taking away from productive stock, and just dissolving it into nothingness, and a very very complicated way of torturing in that sense. But
Yeah.
in a very important question is, as some people raised here in the comments, Putzlumpen ask, maybe the girls perform really well because they believe the ideology. And someone answers, what I noticed with my final school years was that performing girls are more likely to generally believe in that ideology. The school to NGO pipeline is real. So I guess there is some truth in that, because we call this typos the Klassensprecher aus 10b, basically the head girl of the class 10B. There's a very distinct type of girl that falls for this. I think Dutton calls her the. He also had a really nice word for that. But yeah, I'm looking for that. You please. What do you think of this?
What
In
do I
a
think
way,
of?
because the girls performing well means they get good grades at school, but grades are somewhat subjective. So this could be interpreted, of course, as being rewarded for loyalty, because the girls who believe in ideology will write essays that the ideological teacher likes. And yet this is the kind of type who works at NGOs, those, let's say, midwit girls with ambition. There was also a question earlier about why there are so many women at NGOs. And this is just a womanly thing to do, all this social care for social things. This is a woman thing to do. A man should not really care for gay rights or something. And also, we might not actually talk about this today, but there are some secret anecdotes about those schoolgirls that are hidden KF deepest lore. But we can go back to more serious topics.
Willem, you are back, or because I have a next link that I posted to another, and this is one of the more important organizations that I want to
even more important.
Yes, but yes,
we have to basically be rather time efficient with this one, because I want to get into some questions later, and well, we're already 1.5 hours.
Okay, yes, because of course Belgium, we are bilingual, trilingual nation, so I put it in, give you the German link, so
no, I wanted to see the funny language. I'm
you
gonna
can
do
the
funny
funny
language.
Yeah, it's very well.
I found a Downy on this website.
But this,
yeah,
we're going to say, Willem.
Well, while we're speaking of it, we have to hear it.
Wir sind eine Demokratie und auch Menschen mit Trisomie 21 gehören zu der Demokratie mit dazu. Wir sind ein freies Land.
This is basically how all of this feels like looking at.
Yes, and so this organization here is UNIA, which is the Equality and Anti-Discrimination Center of Belgium. Every European nation, European Union needs a similar organization like UNIA. Germany has it, Austria has it, every organization within the European Union has to have it by law. What it is, it's an equality center, and equality centers are subsidized by the government, get a government mandate, but the government is not allowed to have any operational control. On the boards in Belgium, there are the people on the boards are elected by parliament, so they have to be approved by parliament. But most of these people are experts from a certain fields. I have the list of the names saved, but not going to go into that. But they're operationally independent. And what does it do? Equality centers, they have the mandate to maintain, to push for diversity and equality, anti-discrimination within their country. And they do it in multiple ways. One is just plain old lobbying work. Second is they have, at least in Belgium, and it somewhat likely depends on the country you're in, they have the authority to review and give recommendations of laws that are relevant to anti-discrimination. They also, to some degree, write policy proposals. Very important, what they also do, they collect data. So this is one of the main things they are used for, is to generate the studies that look at discrimination, how many racist incidents were there in the country, all these kinds of things. That's what they do. Another thing that they engage in is they already set the place where if somebody has a complaint about I've been discriminated against, you go to you give them the information, they will look at it and will say like, yes, this is a real incident, and then they will advise you how to solve it, or if this is to who you have to speak, do you have to give it to the police, all this kind of things. And in some cases, they decide to become civil party in a lawsuit. And they then drag in a person to in the court of law to be judged for discrimination. So this is one thing what they also do. But the thing is, besides all that, they're also the experts when it comes to diversity, equality, and inclusion within Belgium. So they also give advices to other to businesses, to rights propose, like every municipal election or every just a national election, they write a document that's saying like, these are the kinds of points we want the government to make, or here this is like vote on parties who endorse these policy proposals, or to local governments, or they give an advice, yes, local government, here these things you can do to become more of an inclusive municipality. So they do all these kind of things. They also give workshops to, could be state employees, could be police forces, could be all these kinds of all these other kinds of businesses, to help them become more diverse. Or the police wants to write a new code of ethics. It could be that they are asked to review it to make certain that the diversity, equality, and inclusion angle is present enough, and they are mandated by law to be like, even if based party takes over whatever country, they still have to have an organization like that. And of course you can push and change it to some degree, but this organization has to be there. And in the whole civil society network, it's such a vital organization because it gives all that expertise to these other organizations. It's also a key meeting hub of the whole network. So this is why and this is something I would ask the people here in the chat, look at these organizations within your own country, because they do have a real influence on your life. They can, if you're as a right-wing chat, there is a good chance that if you ever get dragged into a court of law, it will be because of an organization such as this. Like, there are several people, acquaintances of mine, through the whole Flemish right, who have been taken to task by UNIA. UNIA is a civil party in their case for Belgian law, for discrimination and whatever. So this is why this is a very important organization to keep in mind.
You mentioned in the beginning, this one is basically independent.
Yes.
So how was it created? And
UNIA is the first of its kind in Europe. It was created by law in 1993 by a law of parliament. Back then, it was only responsible for anti-racism. But in 2002, it's because around 2002, there was started in the 2000, but became official by 2002 and had to be enforced by 2003. The European Union, in its policies, said, okay, now every country of the EU has to implement anti-discrimination laws. This was mandated by the European Union, and by 2003, all European nations had to have implemented those directives in their own national framework. And one of the things that Belgium then did was give all those expand the anti-discrimination powers of UNIA, and then it got because at the time it was also responsible for migration, but then in 2013 it got split. Miriam is the organization for that there's all that same kind of thing, but for migrants, well, UNIA is now only for anti-discrimination of all stripes. So that's what it does, and it's that kind of idea for these kinds of organizations really started after the fall of the Berlin Wall during the 90s. Then you see most of this stuff in Europe. There were already some preliminary things. Belgium had its anti-discrimination law, first one in 81, if I recall correctly. So then there were already some movements for that, but it really started in the 90s, and then in the early 2000s it started to accelerate. And why is UNIA also very important for other Europeans? Because UNIA is used as the example of how such an organization should be run at. It is the standards within Europe. And it's also something funny because it's not a federal organization, it's an interfederal organization. Not only the federal government pays for it, but also the regional governments. But Flanders, for some things, withdrew itself from UNIA and then created its own organization. But that's a whole other story. But it is such a central part of that whole civil society network. In Belgium, they get about 9 million euros a year from the different parliaments to do this. So that's for Belgium a reasonable amount of money to invest in all these kind of studies and to push that whole agenda, and to also very important to hold the government to talk. Like, they can criticize, and even if necessary, I should look at the exact what they can do, but I think they also can go against the government and ask them in a court of law to say you're not doing what you should do, or they go complaining to the European Union if the Belgian government is not, if they are not doing what they are supposed to do.
This is so funny. I just love the concept of that. So you as a state pay someone who can.
Yeah. Because by law they have to exist and they have to be funded by Belgium, but they're operationally independent.
So could you just scrap the law and say, yeah, you're done?
If you say it on an EU level, as long as the EU, it's by the EU mandates that such organization exists. So you could try to reform it and change it, and then you have to change the whole idea of what's anti-discrimination, all these kind of things mean. But as long as that remains enshrined in the idea of the EU, you as a member state of the European Union cannot remove that organization. Even it has to even exist in Hungary, even though they do some things to try to turn it as a tool for Orban's regime. But even then it has to be there, and especially in Western nations, like here in Belgium, where it already exists. Like if the based Vlaams Belang would take over and would really try to change everything, they cannot just fire the people. There they can try to amend its reach of the organization, but they cannot dissolve it. They can maybe try to pull out a few fangs, maybe cut off a few claws, but they cannot completely make it remove all its weapons.
And this is the dangerous concept of independent. Whenever the government calls something independent, this just means out of reach for you, but of course not for us. So because I was thinking about how could you destroy this? Could you just found another NGO and say, okay, this is our anti-discrimination
it's
NGO?
not just an NGO. That's
or whatever this is. Could you just found an alternative and say, now this alternative is our EU compliant anti-discrimination thing, and we pay this? Or does it have to be UNIA, and who decides who is on the board of UNIA? And of course, if it is independent, I am not mentally, let's say, linked to democracy or whatever, but independent means you cannot change it even if you want, because it is not an elected position. It is maybe not even influenced by other elected positions. So this is really a trick, because we always push on this elite theory thing that you cannot vote your way out of this. The elites always rule and they don't really care about elections, and all those independent institutions, they are the proof of that, because you cannot change it. Those are their people. Also, for example, the separation of powers, that the courts are independent. Somehow the government or whoever, the voters, cannot change who is in the Supreme Court or in the Constitutional Court or whatever you have in your country. But independent means you cannot change it. And this is basically a way to establish your own power and rule, even if you might lose some election. And this is something that we really have to put an eye on, and we have to have plans how to destroy so-called independent institutions.
Yes, very much. So, and just somewhat related to all of this, I send another link, and I think you should also put this in the description, because this is a very interesting page of the where basically the European Institute for Gender Equality, which is a very important, which is a part of the European Commission, has on that page basically compiled all the relevant equality, like not all, but a lot of the relevant equality laws and policies that certain European nations, that all members of the EU hold on to, including all the equality bodies that exist, which kinds of I think, I don't know if they put in here what they all can do, but by and large, it has a lot of documentation, because again, almost everything is in public. Most people do not know it. Most of these reports have probably been, like, I am likely the only right-wing person of the 10 or 15 people who have ever read these reports in full, but it almost all exists in public. It requires a lot of work to compile everything and to look through everything, but almost everything of it exists in public.
It's exactly as I think Scrum said it. These conspiracies exist, but they are just boring and pretty gay. So it's all out there. It is basically telling you exactly, we're gonna force everybody to have this, and there's nothing you can do about it. But it's all boring, like 50,000 pages of some managerial bullshit speak. Like, what the...
Like, for example, did you know that because of the EU policy, every member state has to have an equality minister?
Yeah, like, I know. And even universities have to have this too. And it's the perfect... I mean, if I were to design, if I were an evil person, sitting in my evil person lair, and I had to design the perfect, never-ending government program, it's basically establish a national body for gender equality. It's something completely impossible, biologically impossible, and because of that, it's a never-ending bureaucratic nightmare. It's perfect.
Yeah, and I think to put in this all, I'm not going to share this, but you can look it up on your own. But those equality bodies, of course, within Europe, have their own European level organization in which they talk with one another, coordinate to some extent, and share out best practices. So that's also, again, it's not you cannot just reduce yourself to your own nation in this sense. Those networks are, at the very least, regional within, or a continental within Europe, and to some degree also very much global. So it's all, like even Hungary has to have it because part of the EU. Like, you can be based Orban as much as you want. You are forced to have these kinds of institutions.
It's so funny. Even the name's Ministry of Equality.
Yeah.
It is completely Orwellian. It's, I mean,
and again, to hammer that point home, it's not just the NGOs. If it was just the NGOs, it would be much easier, but it's entrenched into everything. Civil society has its grasp into everything, but the government joyfully complies with it all. So it's all mixed together, and that makes it just much more difficult to untangle it, like get everything free. Yeah, it's like you have to have these organizations. Like you can maybe look here. What's the one in for Germany called? Or no, that's the law for gender equality.
Yeah, Grundgesetz.
Yeah, in German.
Le Holy Grundgesetz.
So this is the pretext why you have to do this or whatever. But of course, the Grundgesetz, the basic law, the fake constitution of Germany, it already existed when there was no gender equality. So of course, this is a post-hoc question, and you could just as easily have no gender equality.
A lot of this is
guys, just look at this sentence. Sufficient personnel dedicated to gender equality is a precondition for
yeah, but they truly believe this. I think I shared this to Peter, or when I was going through that document of the EU action plan, and I was looking at some study, and that study said, yeah, a country loses like 5% of its possible max GDP because they're not gender equal. And if they would be gender equal, GDP would go up by 5%.
And of course, it's completely made up.
But they believe this, and they create policy based on this.
By the governmental bodies in 5 member states, Bulgaria, Poland, Slovakia, and others, Hungary, have particularly low levels of human resources, fewer than 5 people, dedicated to gender equality. So fewer than 5 people doing bullshit. All right. By contrast, 5 others, and of course there's Germany, are particularly well-resourced, more than 100 governmental staff dedicated to gender equality.
And that's
now let's calculate. Let's calculate a little bit. So how much do you think they earn, these people? So let's just take something,
they are well
I don't know,
paid.
30,000, 50,000 per year. And
I think they are above average.
And you can always say, like, okay, you have the amount the person gets out at the end, and you have to triple that for the whole costs of the institution. So 100 people, 50,000 per year times 3, 150,000 per person. Good night. And they just do, and like, they're just there to terrorize you. They're just there to make your life miserable.
And this is only central government level. Like I wouldn't be surprised if especially cities like Bremen or Hamburg have their own departments doing this. Why wouldn't they?
This is also how you can hide the costs by splitting them through lots of different channels.
Yeah, someone says it's a very serious part of the reproduction strategy for these ideologies to install DEI officers and such, not just an ideological quirk. Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. It's basically installing a political commissar at every level. And I mean, in that sense, they're even worse than the Soviets.
But it goes even further than party compliance. It's as if you have a Soviet officer who then says, and now you must always keep communist worker doctrine in mind with every minuscule thing you do. It's not just obey the party or else. It goes further than...
Yeah, it's the politicization of all aspects of life. And this is something that is somehow inherent to democracy, that everybody has to be concerned with everything, and especially with those stupid topics. It is infecting every aspect of life. And this is what makes this even more annoying, because if you have a monarchy, most people would not think about those political topics, be it gender equality or whatever.
I mean, looking at this from a basically national perspective, or basically a statecraft perspective, I think we're going to lose the next war. Like with all of this is so much strain, so much drain on resources. This is so much like friction that is generated on design, by design.
If I am not in the finance ministry when the war starts, we will lose. This has to be cut and destroyed.
The only silver lining I really have for these kinds of things is that they're European, and that because of that they further integration of Europe. That's, I think, the only.
Yeah, but currently,
yes, but I mean,
I don't want a European integration if it looks like that. I'd rather have it.
I agree, but the point is that it creates the idea of a larger Europe. It's a very small silver lining, almost non-existent, but it's the same why, for example, I don't mind, even if it's often stupid, like Erasmus. It's retarded in many instances, but it still pushes that kind of idea. But of course, Eurocrats are retarded, and I know it's better than most.
Yeah, and of course, this stupid women's rights or whatever, this kind of European integration, this actually perverts and destroys the concept of being European, because I would like people to have some European consciousness, and you're right, Erasmus could be a part of it, but in truth, most Erasmus students, they just drink alcohol and speak English anyway and don't really integrate in there and discover the other country. But at least this has some positive aspects. But in this case, this is all leading towards something like being European means being pro-gay and women's rights, and then you have all those maps showing the gay score, and the European countries are green, and the rest of the world is red because they are not so gay, and this creates a wrong impression of what it means to be European. And especially if you subscribe to this blue empire, red empire theory of America, now that America is considered by normie Europeans to be right-wing and anti-gay and Christian evangelical, Europeans will have this sort of resistance to America and say, Americans, they are homophobes, but we Europeans are gay, and this is what makes us European in contrast to America. So this is really destroying the idea of Europe. And I can understand why many right-wingers do not like ideas of European integration, because they also connected to those kinds of things.
You should also scroll again to the top of the website. Then you hold to the top. Notice on the subcategory it's part of gender mainstreaming. And this website also has for every country is an good report, summary of what that country has been doing to gender mainstream. So this is also something you could read, or you could even go to the one of Austria or Germany and see what they've been up to. This is why, again, all of this is very much in public. All what they're thinking about, how their judgment, if it's becoming better, if it's becoming worse. Again, the whole idea of democratic backsliding is also based on what these NGOs produce, what these organizations produce. If they see all the tolerance of diversity of the gays or migrants is lowering, this means democracy is backsliding. We must enforce
another 10 trillion. Another 10 trillion for
another 10 trillion to help push more campaigns or change the law so it becomes even more illegal to do things ensure economic, it's such stupid, eliminating stereotypes in culture and science, strengthening gender equality in public administration, making gender equality a task for the entire government. So again, this is the idea of diversity commissar, gender mainstreaming. Make certain that gender, that progressive ideology is part of every function, every facet of your organization, of your country, that there's always that kind of perspective being considered. Yep. So it's
I just
And-
hate it.
And again, it's the working of those NGOs, that civil society with the government, and that whole interaction. So it's to again reiterate it. It's not just some evil NGOs or just some evil financiers. It's a whole network of civil society organizations in compliance and often funded by the government.
Yeah.
So it's one.
The purpose of the system is what it does.
To a large degree, yes. And this is maybe to finish a last thing. This is another, because there are two important parts of the European Commission who are tasked with this whole. You have that the European Institution for Gender Equality, but then you have also the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, which is and I gave the other link, and this is also an important EU level organization who makes sure that fundamental rights, in other words, anti-discrimination, anti-racism, gender equality, all these kind of things are preserved. And maybe in your free time you should have a read through the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, because every country is, since the Lisbon Treaty, obligated to use it or implement it in their own nation, or use it as a foundation within their own nation and interpret it through their own country's tradition. And it's just hilariously retarded, but it's...
Yeah. I mean, in some way, yes, I can understand why one should read it, but then really, I don't want my mind poisoned with such bullshit. I just want
I understand this. I'm already a lost cause when it comes to this, because the last few months I've read way too much of this stupidity.
But maybe we should end on a, well, not too depressing note. Is there anything that can be done?
One thing that at the very least can be done is to have an understanding of how those things work, to know which are the people, which are the organizations who push, who enforce these policies, and to make a list of that. And then if you have that list, if you get into power, or even if you see a scandal, or you look at these finances and see, like, here there is something wrong, then you can use that as factors to take something out, especially on a local level. And I think I've talked with Peter or with you about this before, that protests and all these kind of things, they can work if you want to accomplish something really concrete on a really local level. If you want to shut down something that they want to do in your city, or if you want to stop your local government of doing something stupid, or fire somebody, this is much more effective. So one thing one can do is to, at very least, know all these players on a local level, and to play from there. Another one, of course, if you map out all these organizations and track the money flows, they will also often make mistakes and can be punished for it if you see it. So these are some things that I think about that are possibilities you can do. On the other hand, you can also create small local, especially on a local level, a local organization for, I don't know, your neighborhoods, or maybe, because often you have kind of similar types of NGOs to some that exist for your local area or something you're interested in, and to then use those. Again, it's accumulating personal power, accumulating power within your network. So that also helps to some degree, but this is maybe not the most nice thing to hear, but in the end it will require it to collapse, or to something that can come in its place to really remove it, because you can do some things, and especially if you know about it, you can try to navigate it, but in the end, one needs real power to remove it all, because
Mhm.
without it, it's you
Yeah.
you can't.
It's
One
basically
you can do if you have power is to cut all the funding and give it to other
Yes,
NGOs you can do.
and
And it is hard to control power at the national level or even EU level, but you could maybe just get in power on a local level in your city or in your smaller state, and you could cut funding there. But what is important for this, and this is the big failure of right-wing populism in the past, is that they did not think about this at all. We need to have the plans prepared, okay? We need to have the lists, what funding has to be cut. This all has to be prepared in advance, and it has to be planned, and it has to be done. And this is something everybody can do. Research your local NGOs and civil society organizations and how they are financed. You can look what in your city or village or whatever, in your smallest, what do you call it? It's like the smallest level of government. What are they financing? And make lists and make plans. And once somebody good comes to power, we can just give them the lists. They will be happy to accept the lists, so they don't have to work themselves.
Because this was partly what the problem is we see now with Trump too. They didn't have all the lists or had enough to go after every organization they should go after, or go after these people. And that's the most frustrating thing. You take power, but you do not know what to attack, who to undermine, who to abolish. And then also, don't be a stupid center rightist that you just want to libertarian who just wants to cut the funding, but also then funnel the funding to something else, like make some counter organization or initiative, or subvert it in a good direction, and not just let the money flow stop, because that's also not. Then you're not generating influence or power. You're just, being stupid.
The thing is, yes, generally I agree, but maybe one could do like an institute for discrimination. I know that would be kind of funny, but the thing is, though, for example, these equality between men and women initiatives, they are completely, like, they cannot exist from a right perspective, because it's just complete fantasy land. So the only thing we could do is basically funnel this money into, I don't know,
it could be something
women's
like
clubs,
families, women's clubs, or the center for good relation between the sexes, or something like this.
Red pill content, state mandated.
That's always a possibility. Yes.
All right, I think we've beaten this horse quite a lot already. We're gonna do some listener questions, and then I think we should end this. All right. First one, a funny question. Which NGO pays the guests in our countries while they are in the train, so that they are loud?
I think that's biology that pays them.
Yeah, they don't need funding; they do it for free.
I'd
You could
agree.
have an NGO for, let's say, acoustic environmental protection that does things against this.
Basically, just a chud who walks around the trains and takes away the phones of every.
Yes, this is. I will tell you this, Vulpes. This is, if I were super duper rich, I would hire some grugs, some like orcish people prone to violence, and I would pay them a full-time wage for them to just go around in the metro and in the train and take away every foreigner's smartphone and throw it out of the window. This would be my philanthropic endeavor. I would pay this, but I am not rich enough to do this. But we could do it with government funding to have this acoustical environmental police that cleans the acoustical space.
Yes, I think most people would agree with this. I think I talked with you about is that one of the signs of whiteness is to have a respect for that space, and this immediately is one of the things that show to me that certain Eastern Europeans, mainly Ukrainians and to some degree also Russians, if I'm sitting on the train, especially when the refugee crisis was, like when the war started, if it was a white person having speakerphones, it was always a Ukrainian, always. Like no German or French would do this.
Yeah, this is the proof that they are not in fact white.
I mean,
White does
this
not
is also
mean white is not a reference to what kinds of light rays your skin reflects in what matter, but white is a spiritual concept. What sensibilities do you have? And this is really something. This is a property or not property if you don't have it. Do you realize the effect of your actions on your environment, on your surroundings? This also includes brownoids always littering and throwing trash just on the ground. And if I saw this in the train, I was sitting there, and in front of me was a man of African origin, and he was eating a croissant, and all the crumbs of this croissant were falling to the seat and to the ground, and it was terrible. I was dying inside. My mind, which is focused on order and cleanliness, could not accept this. How can you eat something and not take into account that you spill crumbs on the ground? This is really unacceptable. But they don't even notice this. They don't have the mental capacity to do this. So this is what differentiates whites from non-whites.
To have become civilized.
I mean, this is also why I'm not really a European in the modern sense, because basically everything that the current European Unity project says is, you're just the same as a Pole. But that's just obviously a lie.
But part of the problem of the European project is that Europe is too broad in their conception. Like, at some point Europe ends, and it's not infinity enlargements bullshits. Like, Georgians are not Europeans. They should maybe be part of Europe in a broader sense, that they're subordinated to it. But Albanians should also not be in the Union. But again, this is one of those, and a topic for another day.
We have another really nice question. Wouldn't you agree that there are certain physiognomies associated with the NGO universe? A bit of topic, but interesting question. And I'd say absolutely yes. I have the perfect example from a few days ago, from a video from Mike Benz. And here we see, like, he's listening to some guy named Martin Husovec, assistant professor of law at the London School of Economics, and the person introducing this guy. I mean, just look at these. These are the people that make your life miserable, and they enjoy it. When there's the talk. Look at this rat.
Look at the way he is sitting and holding his microphone.
Yeah,
I think he's gay.
I don't know, but the thing is, he talked about something, and every second sentence it was, we have to regulate. We have to regulate. We have to find a framework of whatever. It's these people just love meddling in things, and I don't think this guy looks like a guy who just wants it for the power. He just loves to create a mess. To the thrill of annoying people. I think this is also really huge.
I have another piece of esoteric knowledge. When women hit the menopause, they become sexless beings. They are not real women, but they are also not men. And they are lacking the positive attributes both of men and women. And those kinds of women, the 50-year plus with a short haircut, they are the most annoying and terrible kinds of human beings.
Often, but sometimes they're also an ally against annoying pink-haired, blue-haired femoids, because they do not like them, and then they attack.
When their Karen characteristics align with more right-wing fundamentals.
To some degree, yeah.
But
this is the
clear...
kind of woman. This is something that really annoys me, that all things that are fun to children are forbidden. You know, when I was a child, you could climb on trees. I was just recently, I was at the same place where a tree was, where I loved to climb when I was a child. And nowadays the lower branches are cut off, so a small child cannot reach it and not climb it and all those things. And the playgrounds, the most fun constructions, which of course are dangerous, they are taken away, because those menopausal security commissar women with short hair, they hate fun and they hate danger, and they want to make everything secure, but by making it secure they destroy it. They are really a kind of no fun allowed people in the worst imaginable sense.
Yeah, it's back to the main question. There is a clear sign of the bio-Leninist coalition going on with these people. They most of them are just there because, you know, they wouldn't be in the they wouldn't be pretty far up in the hierarchy if there was anybody or any normal sense of hierarchy. And I think this is, I mean, some of the like true Southern elite, I do think they do it intentionally because they are loyal servants in that sense. Maybe they even hate them as much as we do, but yeah, we never know. Okay. I nominate Vulpes for the position of chairman for the All-European Congo Civic Development and Extraction Company. Definitely not a colony.
This is called Congo Cobalt Company. Vulpes, do you know about our plans of the Congo Cobalt Company?
I do not.
This will be a great future. We want to create the Trade Federation, which will be an independent organization. Please pay attention to this word, independent. And the Trade Federation will have the Congo Cobalt Company, which will be a resource extracting company in the Congo. But the Congo will be the private asset of this Congo Cobalt Company. And there's let's say legal or financial questions. Will the Congolese in the, how you call it, the balance in the financial releases of this company be considered assets or liabilities? This is a big question. But the Trade Federation, it will have its own army with droids and drones and so on to protect the trade lanes on the seas. And what it also will do, it will destroy or steal and capture all ships by the BRICS alliance. It will take down Chinese ships and steal the stuff. Our future will be glorious. And do you know this podcast episode of Bronze Age Pervert with Eric Prince? Because there is this anecdote of Eric Prince where he tells that his mercenary private security company, they somehow conquered and stabilized an African country. And he told us a number, how much this cost. And I don't really have the number in my mind, but if I remember it correctly, it was around $10 million. So not that expensive. So with the Casa Rosa budget, we could conquer an entire country in Africa, and the returns of investment will be great. So if we have the NGOs, we will create this Congo NGO or whatever, African Development Foreign Aid NGO, and we will conquer the country. It will build mining extraction constructs and so on, and it will be very good. So I know how to spend money, and the leftists don't. They could have conquered an entire country in Africa, but what did they do? Have some gay house where they answer questions what to do with your friend is gay.
I mean, the only important question is, are the Congolese assets or liabilities? What do you say?
What I would want to say, I'm not going to say, because I respect my I want to remain a free citizen. Let's keep it at that.
We are all equal here. All equal. All right. We had that already. Well, all right. This one basically just says, well, we should have German NGOs that populate the eastern countries. Basically, Congo Cobalt Company.
Oh, I have
that,
another
in Poland.
anecdote. This is really interesting because I am interested in corruption networks and how does Austria work, because Austria is just a corruption network. And there are interesting things because the biggest bank in Austria it is a Aktiengesellschaft, but most of the shares are held by the foundation of this bank. And the foundation has as its stated goal to promote activities that lead to democracy and so on in Eastern Europe. So basically, the biggest and richest bank in Austria, what it is doing is imperial influencing in the crown lands in the east. I support this. This is a very good thing.
Yeah, but of course it has to. It can't be the base name. It has to be like supporting freedom and democracy trademark. So
yeah, but and if you look, and this is not just this bank, this is many Austrian banks. If you look at a map in which countries they operate, this map might seem somehow familiar to you.
All right. Pretended says, with those few millions, they are causing damage that costs far more. We have to keep that in mind. Yeah, that is true, because it's not just like this, the money they spend and just waste. It's the active, well, sabotage of productive parts of the society that they produce. So, yeah, calculating the true amount of damage would be almost impossible. But yeah, let's just say it's enormous. It's basically, I mean, in other times, something like that would be considered treason or active subversion. But we live in the strangest times of them all, so it's not. It's actually promoting the democracy and the freedom.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Okay, Peter, I have the perfect job title for you. The expert for physiognomy, biological disparities, and public audit advises the local government on the demographic zoning of school districts. I think this would be a nice job. Cozy.
Yes, I would put this in my LinkedIn, and I would be good at it.
Maybe start with Twitter and.
But in reality, I want to do something in the finance ministry.
Yeah, the Rotstift department.
You could make this more efficient. You could buy a barrel of red ink and just take the budget and throw it in the barrel. This would be a few seconds. So I would actually save my own working time by doing this.
Of course, it's a very German answer. You have to make it even more efficient. All right, AI tools, net positive or Indian slop catalyst?
I do not like them.
No, this is a title
Indian
for a
or
study
AI,
that we
AI
will.
tools?
No, this is a study that will be
This is a
done from
PhD.
our civil
Yes.
society. This is a PhD thesis that will be done in the future.
We can dream. We can dream. All right. I think, yeah. I think we've said all we had to say. Are there
Yes.
any more things you want to share? You want to let the people know?
No, I have a Substack that I sometimes post an article on, but more than that, I don't have anything that I particularly wants to shill. So, like the study, I am digging in these organizations, and maybe at some point in 6 months, maybe a little more, I will try to publish something most of it, what I'm now doing is in Dutch, but I will definitely also write something in English that can be shared. So look for that in a couple of months.
All right. Peter, anything you want to say?
Well, one thing we can say, if you are interested, you could come to the Karlstage. It is a good event, and you meet people like Vulpes, you meet people from other countries that are great. And of course, we are not patriots. We hate patriots. We are globalists and cosmopolitans, and we like people from other countries if they are good countries. So this is where our guys go and where you meet good people. So I can recommend it.
I don't know. I just don't like any labels. I'm
No,
just
of course,
saying.
but we have to reclaim those labels. Okay, the planet Earth is a globe, so a globalist is somebody who wants to conquer the entire globe for his people, and this is what we
Okay,
want.
so most important questions: are you for the small German solution or the big German solution? So including the moon or without the moon?
No, we don't need the moon. It is more expensive than what it brings us because it has no air. But every place that has air has to be controlled by us, because if it's not, the Indians are throwing trash into the sea. We need to do lots of foreign aid interventions.
Yeah, especially in India, lots of foreign aid. All right, I think that settles it. I just, yeah, I think to end it, I just need a nice little military edit because we've seen so many weird faces and I don't know, really, really not so good looking people. So I just need something to power up our spirits again. And well, thank you for listening and have a good night.
Germany has now agreed to rebuild their military. And they've decided that they're going to go all out and they're going to now rebuild their military. Be careful what you wish for.
Ah, yeah. All right. Now we can end this.
Voila. Okay.